All right, everyone, back with Jarrod again, and we are going to cover this co-living portion that you have to think about, and that's house rulers rules. Whether it's pad split, you're managing it yourself or using another third-party source, you have to have good rules in place to make sure your property runs right.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so a few things that we really have to hit on, and it doesn't matter the platform, is I screwed this up bad. I did not put good house rules in my place when I started. So I'm really curious how you started. And I know you started right with pad split. So how you started to make sure you had good house rules in place.
Yeah, I leveraged what padsplit did, but I also networked with a lot of other hosts, not just, and I also went to Sam Wiegert.
Yeah,
he's in the,
he's out of my area. Yeah,
yeah,
we're
he's
over
on the
Charlotte.
East. Yeah. And I went to his 5 day free class, by the way, and picked up quite a few things from him because originally I was actually going to do the non-furnished rent by room long term, but ended up switching for tax reasons and things. But yeah, I picked up a lot from him and I added it to the rules. But the high level ones are, the cleanliness and the common areas rules, and I go over each step better. I can go through it real quick.
Do
So
it.
no smoking, no kitchen appliances in the bedrooms, um, no guests. That's another big one. The quiet time, no outside furniture, but this is just for the common areas. So obviously they can. I don't care if they bring stuff into the bedrooms or not, but I don't care. But it's basically to prevent someone from. You'd be surprised putting a couch in say the kitchen or something. Who knows? I just that's the way it's established. So they say, hey, you didn't say you couldn't do it. Things like that, and then just be courteous and the cleanliness for the bathrooms and kitchens and common areas, the big one, and the cleanliness is kitchen, bathroom, and laundry room. So a lot of times people will do laundry and leave it in the wash, right? And then they won't take it out. So what I tell people right up front before the cleanliness is think of it this way: the common areas have to be usable by somebody else if they approach that common area. So if you go and wash dishes and leave them in the sink to soak, then guess what? That's not usable. Not, you have to clean them immediately after use. And this is another reason I took the dishwashers out.
Okay.
I took the garbage disposals and dishwashers out because the people that I don't know if they've never used garbage disposals before, but they were throwing tree limbs, no, not tree limbs, but they're throwing heavy duty
Big
stuff in
chunks
there
of
and
things. Yeah.
just destroying it. And it's like, okay, well, we're done with that. And then the dishwasher is another one where people load up the dishwasher. Well, number one, they don't clean the food off, which I mean, I'm not saying they have to clean them perfectly, but they didn't even take the food off that they threw it in there, and all that food sits at the bottom and burns up the element, and the whole thing goes to. So I just decided to take it out, and that basically more or less forces people to clean it right then and there because they're not allowed to leave it out. And so that's how I've been doing it, and that's the rules I have.
Yeah. I've had some of the same issues because whether it was my old platform or this or pad split or going out on my own, and using a full-time property manager, I did not do this well enough up front. Really really pushing in those rules other than just like they're signing up for them. So they sign up for the rules on whatever platform you're on and not really getting on that like phone call like we talked on the last video with vetting to make sure they understood what they're signing up for because most people just click the box that say I accept and they don't read any of it.
Yep.
So I've recently had another one where they talk about service animals or emotional support animals. We're allowed to have them. You're allowed to have them. You can't say no, but you have to let them, we have to let us know. You can't just move one in and not have any paperwork for it.
I did have a situation where they didn't have the paperwork anyway, but let's say they did. There was one gentleman in the house who was older and was extremely allergic. And so that was another thing that would have been an issue. So luckily they didn't have the paperwork, but I don't know how that works legally. But
Yeah. I
just
mean, legally, if they have the paperwork, we have to say yes. You can't legally tell them they can't come in. So that's another thing that just talking about it now, like I really should be telling people that because I have an emotional support animal in my house right now. So I have to let people know, hey, there's a dog in the house.
hmm.
Um, Yeah, and that's where like it's really getting hard, whether it's long term or even this model, because I do see a lot of people complain, and I had this problem with Pad Split that I had to go and track them down because the member was the one that told me that they had an emotional support animal. I didn't get any paper or anything from Pad Split letting me know that there was an animal living in my house. So how do I even know that? So,
Yeah, I've had that too. I've also had people with evictions that PadSplit did not catch. So
did you know, and I don't know if you even knew this because I actually had the same thing. They will allow you to have one eviction on your record and still clear you.
yeah, they do. I
So
don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying that's another thing when the vetting process, when you see that, you don't accept them if that's something that you don't want to accept.
Right, but what I'm saying is their eviction said zero.
Okay.
Padsplit said nope, they didn't have an eviction, and then through talking to the potential member, they told me. Like I would
Oh,
have probably never known. I thought that was cool, so at least they were honest about it.
yeah.
Um, but
But yeah, you still have to deny them because you know that could be a problem. So,
yeah,
but yeah, that's something that I really wasn't aware of, or maybe I just didn't do my proper you know, questioning when I was trying to interview Padsplit was I'm like, wow, you're still letting people in, they have an eviction. So, and
yeah.
there's a whole bunch of toggles that you can toggle for 24 hours, toggle for like 15% less people that you're going to get because you have a little bit more strict criteria.
I
I
don't
be
think that works, to be honest. I've
I don't
checked
either.
that box and it doesn't seem to do anything. Maybe it does, but on the receiving end as the host, didn't seem to matter like at all. And that's a year's worth of data, you
The
know.
thing is, I don't think either one of us have unchecked that box, so we really don't know if it gets worse.
I did. I
Did you?
checked it
Okay.
I had it unchecked for 2 months or so, and I was like, I need a little better criteria. So I checked it for like 8 months or whatever it was, and I was like, all right, let's see what happens when I uncheck it. And not there's no real change. It seems to
Okay.
be the same to me, and that's just Phoenix market, and I know
Yeah.
that's a new market for them, so they're probably throwing a lot of people um, at
Yeah.
it. So
I've never unchecked that box. But yeah, we're gonna get right back to house rules, and it really is that like I've had some issues with people smoke, people might smoke marijuana, whatever it is, making sure it's not in the house. And I've had issues, and I want to jump into what do you do when house rules are starting to be broken? How do you deal with that?
I'm a little harsher than the most I believe, because I used to do the whole three strike thing like Padsplit did with the keys. It doesn't work. What happens to me, and my experience has been when that first rule is broken, I give a pretty harsh warning, like a phone call and document it, because if it's not in writing, it didn't happen.
Hmm.
Right. In my mind. That's the whole military thing in the background there for me. And so then the next time it happens, I ask them to vacate. So I don't play around with the whole three strike thing. And that's served me well so far. I mean, yeah, people get upset, but I really don't care. I'm trying to, if you don't do that, this is what I've seen happen to me three separate times over the course of a year. They'll take advantage of that, keep going with it. And if it's something where it's affecting other members, that's when you're playing with fire. So,
Yep.
like, let's say cleanliness in the kitchen's a big one where someone's leaving dishes. Like, hey, look, man, I know this is just dishes for you, but this is somebody else who wants to use the kitchen, let's say, then they can't use it because you've left all the dishes there. And then they have to go and clean it up. And that's a negative experience for that member. So I can't have that. So don't do this again, or I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Yep.
And at that point, they've heard it, they've understood it, I've documented it. And if they do it again, they're not going to listen to you. So I'm done. I don't have any tolerance for that. And it's going to sound harsh to a lot of people listening to this. But if you don't do that, you're at the end of the day, yeah, we're providing at least I'm providing a nice house and a good service for relatively cheap. I'm undercutting the studio market by $400 in rent, plus they're negating the first and last and deposit and utilities and all this stuff. So I feel like I'm providing really nice housing, but in order for that to work, they have to the only way it works is if they're clean and they
Yep.
abide by the rules. And if they don't abide by the rules, they're going to drive off the other people. So at the end of the day, I mean, let's face it, I'm doing this to provide housing, but also to earn income. And if
Yeah.
you impact that earning of income, there's no point in me doing this. There's
Yep.
also no point in that person being there. So that sounds a little harsh, but in the beginning, I was trying to be nice about it, and I just getting stepped on, stepped on, stepped on. So I was like, all right, no more of this. And so I had to be a little bit more harsher than. And for people that haven't operated a co-living house, um, it's going to come off harsh, and I know it will be, but that's okay because that's the stuff that people have to hear. And in my opinion,
No, I have to do better at that. I give too many chances to people. And like the last one we were talking about before we went live was videos or it was people having overnight guests. This guy was probably the cleanest person in my house too. He kept the house clean. He was always updating me on things. But after hearing more and more, I found out that he was actually the problem of many things as well and trying to turn me against my members. So when I caught onto that more and realized, yes, you might be doing one thing really well, cleaning. You're always right late on rent, and we're catching you over and over. Like I have cameras, man. I see people going in and out of the door. I see you letting them in. Oh, I
yeah,
didn't have an overnight guest.
yeah.
So PadSplit has you and everybody can figure out their own fee, but PadSplit has a $50 fine that you're able to place on these members. And I started hitting them every single day after that, after I saw that. And because another member complained about that, that I
Yeah.
told them they couldn't have an overnight guest.
Right. That's what I was going to touch on is
So,
now somebody else is doing it. And now you get into high school mode where
yep.
that person did this. And then they, it just,
So
it gets out of hand.
I deny a member that asked me and said no. So when something happens, when somebody else is breaking that rule, I have to act on that.
Yeah.
So I even that member is out now, but I did let the other member know, hey, this member that we just kicked out, yes, he was paying late on rent, but he also had overnight guests that were not permitted, and I did charge him a $50 fee every single evening. So whether that helps or not, I just wanted to let that other member know that that was being taken care of because they
Yeah.
complained about it. So
So I mean the fine is one thing. I don't even do that. I mean to me it's not even worth it. I just go right to the hey, you need to vacate. And
yeah,
right or wrong. I know other people that use that as extra income, right? And they are fine with it. But I don't want to operate that way
yeah,
because over the course of time, I have 7 other members in the house, potentially anyway, usually about 6 or depending on the occupancy. But I have other people that see that, right? And they're
yep,
like, oh, well, they can get away with that. What can I get away with? You know what I mean?
yeah,
It turns into this escalating thing. Whereas if you just every rule, if all the rules are there for a reason, they need to be followed, right? And so if
yeah,
one rule gets broken, I make sure that's enforced, right?
yeah,
And that way other rules. And so I think that's a big reason why I'm also out of state, right? So
yeah,
I can't afford, I'm not there, so I don't know what's going on. So I can't afford to have things slip and go downhill. And that's another reason. And I have really good staff, if you want to call them that, like cleaning ladies, handymen, and they tell me what's going on. AC guys, plumbers, they know the
yeah,
deal and they let me know what's going on. So I just can't afford to have it slip. And so as my occupancy is pretty high. I'm happy and I'm not bothered as much because people don't do stupid stuff. I mean, they still do, but at least once they're there and they see that, hey, I take care of the property too. As soon as something's broken, I act on it. I fix it immediately.
yeah,
I've replaced a refrigerator that probably really wasn't broken, but it was an issue for more than one member. So I just replaced it. And then the washer, the same thing. Like only one guy was complaining. He said, "Oh, it's only kicking out hot water, not cold." Okay, and he said, "I go, well, what's? I'm not a washer. I don't know." And he's like, "Well, it's fading my clothes. Fine, I just replaced the washer. Right, took it out. And I handle that side of the fence." And then I guess discipline side of the fence, I handle pretty quick
yeah,
too. I do give a warning. I'm not like, oh, hey, you read the rules, you're out. So at least
yeah,
that way they know. And I'd say about 60% of the time that actually works, right? Like they know, okay, hey, this guy's kind of serious, don't want to mess around unless they just want to, break the rules and then I have to ask them to leave. And that's part of the reason I'm in Arizona is because there's landlord friendly law and then the members know that as well. And
yeah.
so they're less apt to screw around. Like say in Oregon, they would be like, oh, whatever, you can't kick me out for a year. I'm just going to stay here.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the team and replacing things and service calls on the next call. But another thing I did for rules, because I was letting things slide and I had to try to get my household back in order, and this was a month and a half ago. I had a vacancy in one of my rooms. I actually went down there and stayed in my property for 4 days.
I've done that. I've spent the
And
night for several nights. You'll pick up
yep,
stuff you'll never get from members, like doors slamming at 3 in the morning,
yep.
loud conversations in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, things like that. So
And on top of that, I went and I posted house rules and I talked to each one of my members. Um, and I did my own inspections outside of what everybody else does. And most people that are out of state don't want to do that because that's another trip. It's time consuming. But I'm like, I let some things screw up and I don't know who's telling the truth and not. So I just went down and, bit the bullet and well, it's a trip down to Charlotte and I like being in Charlotte anyway. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah, I go down to Arizona every couple months or so,
yeah.
just for the hell
All,
of it.
all right. Well, I think we hit the house rules and some things to do pretty well. Our next one, we are going to jump into building a team.
Mm.